such a fun show to do every day. But I mean, here we have a variety. We have Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac that kicks things off. Then a lot of laughs and good times with Gustavo Arellano when you need to ask a Mexican. But when you have to talk to Uncle Wilbur, who has passed on, Gustavo is not going to help you. But maybe Mark Ireland will. Mark, the subtitle, Finding Where the Dead Go. And I'm going to ask you right off the top. You are professionally a psychic, among other things.
Actually, I'm not.
Well, I thought it said psychic.
My father was.
Yes?
And actually, I lost a son a few years ago.
Yes.
And as a result of this, I re-explored kind of my father's domain or his background and met with a number of prominent mediums and did some investigations on my own.
Okay, but what do you call yourself if not a psychic?
I'm a business person. I think everyone has psychic abilities to some degree, and I would say that I've had psychic episodes occur. In fact, a premonition the day that my son passed. But I do not do this professionally, or I do not have the same ability my father did.
Well, as long as we're talking about your father, is it okay? Do we have Richard's? I want you to see Richard Ireland performing as he did just a few years ago.
I want to say hello to Pat, like Gallagher. Where are you, Pat? Patricia Gallagher?
Here.
And it seems as though that apparently you're here from, like, Shoshone, Idaho?
I'm originally from Shoshone.
Well, that's nice. We're glad you're here anyway. And it seems as though that apparently you better get ready because your in-laws are going to come out and stay longer than you would like. That'll be in the course of the summer. Maybe you can dream up a little quake or something to scare them in staying home. I feel as though that you're very creative, a very capable individual, and I would like for you to develop your creative talents in every way, because I feel that as the creative becomes more developed, you become more sensitive, then the psychic becomes developed too. Where is S. Lowe, please?
Show. Richard Ireland, he was an entertainer and a psychic, and he would have private consultations with people. But you don't consider yourself either a psychic or an entertainer.
Neither. I'm a business person. I grew up with a father who had those abilities. I saw them on a daily basis. He kept us all in check, knew everything that was going on. So when you grow up in a family like that, you know that it's real. But aside from the entertainer aspect, he also was a minister. And really his reason for getting into the entertainment area or arena was to touch people who would never go to a church, to give them some thoughts within their own minds where they might question and say, well, maybe I am more than a physical body.
The subtitle of your book, Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. And I have to ask you directly, since you had that tragic loss, 18-year-old Brandon, when any of us lose a child at any age, it rips a part of you away. But can you communicate with Brandon? Have you ever?
I would say that I have through mediums, including Alison Dubois.
Who's going to be here Friday?
Lori Campbell, in a lab environment, in a single-blind test, did a phenomenal job. Jamie Clark, who's a local Phoenix area psychic medium, and Linda Williamson out of England. But in addition to those meetings, we had some of our own, I guess you'd call them supernatural events, where I truly believe that we did have a form of contact.
You have the most unusual varieties of experiences in your life. Share with the audience about you and the oil field.
Well, it was actually my father and the oil fields. He had a friend in Texas by the name of Jerry Conser.
But you were a child at the time, right?
Yeah, or at least a teenager. But
yeah.
Jerry had the idea, and it started with gold mine and then oil, to see if the gifts of the spirit, psychic phenomena, could be used for practical applications. And in this particular case, he gave my father some topographical maps and had him mark spots where he felt there were oil reserves. And the first one that he identified somewhere in Texas, they did hit, and it was wildcat drilling, which according to Jerry is like a 1 in 100 chance of getting something, and it was a pretty big well. So they
But you grew up in this atmosphere, and you grew up in an atmosphere that highly criticized always. Anytime that anybody ever says, I know what you're thinking, I have clairvoyant skills, I talk to the dead, all of these things are open to criticism. How do we spot phonies?
Well, it's interesting. That's probably the reason I went into business, because I didn't want to be my dad. I knew it was real, but I saw the reaction I get when I talk to people about it. But I think the thing is, there are phonies out there, and there are techniques that they use. I think the best way to avoid phonies is to get recommendations from people you know and trust, because there are good psychics and good mediums out there, but you need to know from other people that you trust who the good ones are.
Well, give us an experience that you've had with a good one.
Well, I'll give you a couple tidbits from Allison's reading, and that was almost 4 years ago on the money. A couple validations she gave me. One was she described, well, my son Brandon died of an asthma attack while hiking on the McDowell Mountains, and she had mentioned that she felt like a son was coming through. She didn't know if he had been yet to be born or was already passed. And now she had no foreknowledge of anything when we met. And she mentioned that she felt like someone had a risk of drowning, or there was, and then I said, is it a risk to my son? I still have another son that's alive. And she said, do you have a son that passed? I said, yes. And she goes, could it have been asthma? And I said, yes. She goes, well, it felt like it was either a severe asthma or drowning. And the autopsy physician exactly described the symptoms after checking him out. The lungs had expanded to the point of nearly touching in the middle, and that only happens in cases of drowning or severe asthma. She also got my wife's name Susan, my sister-in-law's name Nancy. And one of the most striking things was she mentioned a book that my father was handing to me that was his work, and it was for me to take forward. And just 2 weeks earlier, and no one else in the world knew this, someone who my dad knew 12 years earlier had handed me this book and said, you know, I've been holding this since your dad passed, and he eventually wanted me to give it to you. So the timing was pretty amazing.
Wow. And this is even before Allison shows up on the program.
Exactly.
For me to tell her Friday about all of the good things that you've said. With about 30 seconds left, Mark Ireland, though, while you're visiting us, the book Soul Shift, available in most bookstores?
Yeah, it's in stock in all Barnes & Nobles around Metro Phoenix. It can be ordered through any bookstore in the U.S., and most Barnes & Nobles throughout the U.S. have it, and you can get it online, Amazon or any other online retailer.
Where do the dead go? Can you tell me in 15 seconds?
I don't know where. I would just say that I do have come to the conclusion that there is an afterlife. It may not, maybe we're in one of the few realms that is time-space based, and maybe they're more in a thought form reality that's not restricted by time or space.
Yeah, teachers in my parochial school said that if I continued to behave the way I did, I would wind up in Camden, New Jersey. And I'm desperately hoping that it was a Catholic sense of humor. Soul Shift, Mark Ireland is his name, and the aforementioned Allison Dubois will be talking about similar things on Friday. This is Pat McMahon.